Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. Topic of this It Came From the Network, WWF Unforgiven in Your House from 1998. I would like to mention this does come to us as a suggestion from our good friend Ryan Hadley. Thank you, Ryan, for the suggestion. And if you'd like to make a suggestion or think of a video you'd like to see me review, there is a button there that says join where you can be a member, where that is one of the perks. With that being said, if you haven't seen my shows previously, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. Let's jump right in. We start off with a 6-man tag match, the Nation of Domination, The Rock, D'Lo Brown, and Mark Henry going up against Ken Shamrock, Steve Blackman, and Farouk. This is the first pay-per-view after WrestleMania 14, which I just reviewed not too long ago while we were in WrestleMania season. And between WrestleMania and this pay-per-view, The Rock had taken over Power of the Nation of Domination and kicked Farouk out. Kind of interesting to see two groups like that, two well-remembered groups of the era, the Nation and DX, both had upheaval and regime changes right around the same time. There's a lot of parallels to the careers of Triple H and The Rock at this time frame. Their trajectory was very similar. This was a good match to start the show. Nothing really special about it. Surprisingly, I had remembered this wrong. I had totally thought the Nation won, but Shamrock, Farouk, and Blackman picked up the win here. I'm going to give this one a 3. Like I said, it was good. Just, I could have seen this on any Monday Night Raw of that era. It didn't feel special for a pay-per-view, especially coming off of what should have been a solo match with Farouk and The Rock. Next up, we hear the glass break, and Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out. He brings Mark Eaton into the ring, who was the timekeeper, the guy in charge of ringing the bell, and he basically says to him, you have two choices tonight. You can either ring the bell for the match as it's supposed to be, or if Vince McMahon has you ring the bell at a different time, you can be injured by me. I'm going to beat you up. Basically stating that you'd either be fired and not work for a little while or never work again, which kind of feels like he said he was going to kill him, but I'm taking it more as he was going to injure him. I mean, this was great. It's Stone Cold at the height of Stone Cold, so how can you not like it? Speaking of the aforementioned Triple H, we have Triple H defending the European Championship against Owen Hart. In this match, Chyna is going to be put in an elevated shark cage above the ring. And part of the early story of the match is Chyna trying to get out of the cage. She bends the bars to show her strength, which I thought was kind of awesome that they would do that. She gets out of the cage, but then she still has 20 feet to drop, which the cage starts lowering. We find out the New Age Outlaws are the ones that are lowering the cage. Chyna gets out, causes a distraction, X-Pac gets involved. Ultimately, Triple H picks up the win over Owen Hart here. Afterwards, we get the famous "Enough is enough and it's time for a change" promo. This match was just good for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm giving this one a 4. It was very entertaining in my opinion. Now going from that, we get a match for the NWA Tag Team Championship. Yes, this was during that short time where WWF had an NWA invasion. We had the New Midnight Express, Bodacious Bob Holly, and Bombastic Bart Gunn going up against the Rock and Roll Express of Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. Jim Cornette comes out and introduces the New Midnights, which probably is a highlight of it. That and him going back and forth with the referee. It's funny how they're talking in this in 1998, how the Rock and Roll Express are a little bit beyond their peak, when just this year, 2023, the Rock and Roll Express still wrestled matches. And I would dare to say that they actually were better this year than they were in this match here. This match was not great, and I don't want to put it on any of the members here, because obviously we've seen great matches with the Rock and Roll Express. We've seen Bob Holly have great matches. We've seen Bart Gunn have great tag team matches when he was part of the Smoking Guns. For whatever reason, this match just didn't feel important. It wasn't that great. The New Midnight Express picks up the win here. Ultimately, I'm going to give it a 2. I would say it's just barely above being totally bad, but still not what you would expect from these teams, or at least from the Rock and Roll Express. Going from that, our next match is an evening gown match. They say it's the first evening gown match. I don't think it was. I seem to remember them having evening gown matches going back all the way to the early 90s, but I could be wrong. We have Luna Vachon going up against Sable, and I understand the reaction of the crowd. The reaction of the crowd to this was great. Sable was on fire here. I mean, she was super popular with the company. Objectively, it just wasn't that good of a match. And I get it. I really do. When your core base at the time was teenage to 30-year-old men, and that brings up the heavy majority of the people watching, you give them something like this. And again, Sable was an absolute star. Ultimately, Luna picks up the win where she gets Sable down to her bra and panties. Later this would be called a bra and panties match. After we see Sable getting comeuppance, chasing Luna under the ring, coming out with Luna's garb, all of her clothes, which had us come back to seeing Goldust giving Luna her jacket so she could cover up. And I forgot to mention, Mark Marrow is actually the one that cost Sable the match by distracting her. This was in the era where he was jealous of her becoming popular. So we're going to see that's part of the build to the next pay-per-view. I believe the next pay-per-view they had their match against each other. All in all, not a great match. I do understand why it was there. I do understand the appeal. I'm giving the match a 1 now. That's followed up with another legendary team from the 80s going up against a newer team as well. We get the New Age Outlaws versus the repackaged and just returned at WrestleMania Legion of Doom 2000 with Sunny. And this isn't a new version of the Legion of Doom. It's still Hawk and Animal. This is before Droz was added to this. But they were basically repackaged. They were wearing different gear. They wore like a hockey helmet to the ring, kind of trying to freshen up the gimmick, I guess. But in my opinion, I don't think you ever needed to freshen up the Road Warriors or the Legion of Doom, whatever you want to call them. They're a gimmick to me that's evergreen. You can always have them go out and they're always going to get a pop because the fans are always going to love them. It was cool to see two of what I would consider two of the probably top 10 or 15 tag teams of all time, with the Legion of Doom being in the argument to being one of the greatest tag teams of all time, wrestle each other on this card, kind of a dream match. Ultimately, we knew where this was going, and I feel like the Legion of Doom 2000 era is looked at more poorly because of stuff like this, because you have the Legion of Doom, and like I said, they just returned a month ago, and they're already losing here. The one thing about the Legion of Doom, much like a Goldberg, much like Brock Lesnar, part of their popularity is them just going out there and destroying fools. Again, ultimately, the Outlaws pick up the win here. I'm giving this a 3. I thought it was good. Not really great. I wish we had a little bit more. After the match, we see the Road Warriors give the Doomsday device to the referee to give the fans something to cheer about. And I understand. Road Warriors don't need to win every match, but if you're going to have them come back, don't have them lose for at least a couple months. You know, let them build up 15, 20 wins, 10 wins on Raw, something like that, before you have them lose. Just my opinion. Next up, we're treated to a live country song concert. Basically, they were masking, putting in the stuff for the Inferno match later, so they had to get us distracted for the ring. We have Tennessee Lee, who introduces Sawyer Brown, and Sawyer Brown is being the backup band for Jeff Jarrett, where technically him and Sawyer Brown Band are kind of duetting here. This wasn't bad. I mean, everybody remembers Be With My Baby Tonight, which it's memorable because of the feud and everything. Jarrett really wasn't a bad singer, and I'm not a country music aficionado, but I remember Sawyer Brown Band, and I remember them being a bigger band at the time. So this was definitely a coup to get them to come in. Ultimately, we see at the end, Steve Blackman comes out to attack Jeff Jarrett, and then eventually gets hit in the head with a guitar, because of course, it's Jeff Jarrett, he's going to hit somebody with a guitar. A nice little segment here, a nice little time filler, while again they were putting, and you'll see it if you watch the video back, there's a giant pipe that comes down to the ring, which I'm guessing is what carried the propane down to the ring to ignite everything. But anyway, that is followed up by the aforementioned Inferno match. The Undertaker versus Kane, and this is the first ever Inferno match where basically they have piping around the ring. The flames are going up. I really enjoyed this match for the spectacle of it. The match itself wasn't as good as a lot of the other Undertaker and Kane matches. Like I said, just a month before this, we had WrestleMania 14, which had a really good Undertaker and Kane match. The match here was good. I feel like the Inferno portion took away from it. We do see where Undertaker dumps out Kane, and Kane starts brawling with Vader in the aisleway, which leads to an impressive dive by The Undertaker diving out of the ring and over the flames, which really looked cool. Like I said, a lot of the visuals were really cool, but it had to be tortuous for them to wrestle in that. It had to be super hot, and especially for Kane, who not only had to wear his regular gear, but spoiler, had to probably wear some fire retardant gear on at least his arm. Match-wise, not so great. Spectacle-wise, it looked fantastic. Taker does pick up the win, where he's backpedaling Kane, and Kane sticks his arm out and lights it on fire. And instead of stop, dropping, and rolling, he ran out of the arena with his arm on fire, which I hope they put out as soon as he got through the backstage area. Again, it was a good spectacle. Match quality wise, not as much. I'm gonna give it a 4 just because I was entertained, but I'd prefer to watch their WrestleMania matches and other matches that they've had with each other over this one. Last but not least, we have the final match for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Stone Cold Steve Austin defending against Dude Love. And I went on record a million times saying that Mick Foley is my favorite wrestler of all time. And I'm not really angry about the Dude Love character. There were some very enjoyable parts of it. I don't think the Dude Love character should have ever been a heel. I could see arguments for a heel Mankind. I could see arguments for a heel Cactus Jack. Makes perfect sense. But Dude Love was the personification of a babyface wrestler. That's what Mick Foley envisioned it as. So the dude being a heel, in my opinion, didn't really fit as well. And yes, I know all three characters are the same guy, but I do feel Mick Foley wrestled it 3 different distinct ways within each character. This is another really fun match. The only issue I would have with it is everybody watching knew there was no chance that Dude Love was beating Steve Austin after Steve Austin just finally won the World Championship. So it did kind of feel like the match was going to be a foregone conclusion, and it felt that way when I watched it back in the day as it aired live. So yeah, there was that to it, and I understand sometimes even being a foregone conclusion, a match could be good, and this was a really good match, don't get me wrong. I just didn't feel like there was that importance to it. Like Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels, we knew that Austin was going to beat Michaels, but we wanted to tune in because we knew that Austin was going to beat Michaels. Famously, when Mick Foley wins the World Championship, when Nitro tells everybody that Foley's going to win the championship, everybody turns from Nitro to watch that because even though they know the outcome, they want to see Mick Foley win the championship. Just my opinion, it took a little bit away from me. Ultimately, Dude Love wins by disqualification because Austin hit an official when he struck Vince McMahon. I'm going to give the match a 4. Like I said, I thought it was really good. Could have been great, especially with the 2 talents involved. Overall, this felt like a little bit of an up and down card. It definitely was coming off of one of the most important WrestleManias of all time in WrestleMania 14, and this was basically a reset button for the whole company. DX had changed hands. The Nation of Domination had changed leadership. Shawn Michaels is gone for the next 4 years. We're starting to see Sable break away from Mark Merrow. We're getting the very beginnings of the Austin era, early on in the Undertaker and Kane feud. So yeah, this was kind of a reset pay-per-view and kind of a really fun pay-per-view to watch. Overall, I think the pay-per-view altogether was better than some of the parts. Like I said, there were some matches I really didn't like as matches. The New Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express, Luna versus Sable, but ultimately everything else was pretty good. It is a show I would recommend going back and watching, especially to see the first Inferno match, and if it is the first Evening Gown match, they announce it as such. I don't think it is, but it's there. To see the absurdity of having an NWA Tag Team Championship defended in the WWF. It's just, there's nuggets of gold all over this. Overall, I'm giving the show a 4. I thought it was highly entertaining. With all that being said, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. And again, you want to click that join button if you want to become a member. And if you made it all the way to the end, let me know what your favorite face of Foley is. Is it Cactus Jack? Is it Mankind? Is it Dude Love? Is it Santa Claus? Is it Commissioner Foley? Is it just Mick Foley? There are so many now with the different iterations even after the career that I think we could add them to. Let me know down in the comments. My name is George Coles, and this has been another It Came From The Network.